If you followed our channel, you know that I've done many programs on unified Giza plans. Now, what you're saying to talk about a unified Giza plan is that individual pharaohs didn't make the final decision about where to put their pyramids at Giza. That is, of course, the prevailing Egyptological line that each pharaoh designed his pyramid, and that was that. And of course, that's the way most of world history runs. You know, the Caesar, the Genghis Khan, they're in charge, they do their thing. But if you say there's a unified plan, what you're saying is that all the pyramids were placed according to a master plan, which means those pharaohs had to agree to that. And that's a tremendous amount of humility for a ruler, you know, a Napoleon type of ruler to humble himself to. So one thing that a unified Giza plan says is that there was a great authority at one time, you know, an Enoch or an Imhotep, who had wide respect, and so people were willing to submit their plans to him. Now, it could be that Khufu, whose father Sneferu was the largest stone builder in history, and he did the trinity of large pyramids, Meidum, the Bent Pyramid, and the Red Pyramid. It could be that Khufu, his son, you know, took up the same calling, and Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure were all planned initially. You know, Mad Simpson has done a video where he shows that he thinks that the face on the Sphinx was Khufu. And so part of Khufu's unified plan could have been the Sphinx and the three pyramids that he built. As a matter of fact, one of the engineers that AIP works with says that there was a single build, that he shows how it would have been much more efficient to have a single ramp between the three pyramids instead of having three individual ramps that had to be put up and dismantled, etc., etc. And it makes a lot of sense. Maybe someday I'll do a video about how there's very good evidence, both in terms of just efficiency, but in terms of what's on the Giza Plateau, that there was a single build. And so that could be, you know, and I found a block. I did a show one time about that, about a block I found on the north side of the Great Pyramid that was slanted in a funny way. I, you know, put the tools on it, and it points right to the Sphinx. So it seems that, like many people think, the Sphinx was there before Khufu, or at least at the time of the building of the Khufu pyramid, the Sphinx was known about or being planned, pointed to. In any case, the unified plan I want to look at today is that of geometrician, mathematical wizard, John Legon. So in my last video I showed a sketch I did of Legon's plan, this 1,000 by 2,000 cubit double cubit square that makes up, he says, like the essence of the Giza plan. He derived this. He didn't invent this. He says the geometry points to this. And, you know, I won't take a lot of time to point out what he did. Some of you can just tell by looking at the lines I've drawn there where he says the critical parts are. But one, as we pointed out in the last video, was just as the bent pyramid of 200 cubits was, you know, divided at the 110.1 and the 89.9 mark, here a 2,000 cubit configuration is divided by the same root 2, root 3 ratio, 1101 and 899. So here's a couple things. This shows that it seems like a plan would have been based on the complete, you know, west side of Khafre. You can see I'm pointing to the fact where he says the bottom of the 1,000 cubit you know, square is not at the total west side of the Khafre pyramid. So that's a little unusual. That's where Legon says the geometry led him. And then the same thing up here. You'd think we'd have 1,000 and 1,000, which we do, but that middle line doesn't go from the south corner, the south edge of the Khafre pyramid. The south edge is what leads to the 1101 and the 899, this you know, amazing root 2, root 3 ratio. And then 3, I show that similarly that the corner mark there, which is like the center bottom of the 1,000, 2,000 layout, is, you know, not in the center or the edge of Khafre. And then the fourth thing, that Menkaure is out of the hunt, is outside this 1,000 by 2,000 cubit basis. Now, Legon has other plans that include Menkaure, including a 2,000 cubit, because if you take the west side of Menkaure and take it 2,000 cubits, you'll be right exactly at the eastern border of the two major temples that are the Sphinx temple and the Khafre temple. So, but the first point being that Menkaure is outside the square, but is necessary to create the square. if you look at the lines there. So Menkaure is outside the 1,000 by 2,000 cubit rectangle, but is necessary to create it. It wouldn't be that 1,000 by 2,000 ratio wouldn't be there except for Menkaure, which fits one theory I've had, that the three Giza giants are a symbol of the Trinity. And so, you'd have the Father and the Son and Khufu and Khafre, and so Menkaure would be the spirit. And so the spirit is kind of, hidden, out of the way, not visible, but very necessary. So for what that's worth. Okay, so you've got a unified Giza plane here, and you got the Sphinx facing to the east, sort of protecting this whole convocation, this holy sphere here that's Giza. All right, so we look at Legon's plan here. And so right there is where Kenkauwe's and the Second Sphinx is. Okay, so a close-up, just seeing it right there, that is where the Second Sphinx is. The line that's the border of Legon's 1,000 by 2,000 cubit rectangle, the Sphinx is right on that border, just like it is on the other plan with the circle. Here's Dr. Rita, a friend of mine. He's worked for antiquities for over 30 years. His office is in the shadow of the Great Pyramid. He's been there 30 years, and he took me back and showed me his theory about this being the Second Sphinx, this structure here on the Giza Plateau. It's the same height, same basic size, and basically the structure is the same as Mark Lehner says the limestone layering is on the Sphinx, the Great Sphinx to the east. So here, Dr. Rita's back is to Kenkauwe's, and he's pointing up to me, pointing up to the head of the Second Sphinx. This is a picture I took right over the back of the Second Sphinx, and again, its head, is the same height just about as the height of the first Great Sphinx. I just think that this one's never been restored, because we know that the Great Sphinx has been restored many times, or it would never look as nice as it does, even though the nose is chipped and it's got other imperfections. You still look at the Second Sphinx, it's probably the largest, most famous statue in the world. And so this Second Sphinx here simply wasn't renovated, but it's there. Okay, so you've got the Sphinx, his eyes, his face, pointing to the outside here, protecting the Giza complex against enemies, intruders, or people not in the know. But the Sphinx that's over here is facing the other direction, facing west, which would be up on the picture there to the left. Now, the Sphinx that I've drawn here, if you followed our program, we derived the Eye of Horus directly from the geometry of the three Giza pyramids. And so from that, I had my artist put together a whole Sphinx, because I think the shading shows it there. You've got sort of like the headdress there through the shading. You've got the body through the shading. So I think that this, symbol, this Sphinx was meant to be, written on the plane of Giza. And so the Sphinx that we're pointing to here in the Legon plan is facing, to the west, the opposite. So again, that's where the Sphinx is, the Great Sphinx on that circle, and he's protecting to the east, to the outside. But as I've pointed out in my hunches before, now finding this Legon plan, the Second Sphinx is facing west, sort of saying, not only does this holy place need to be protected from intruders from the outside, but some people from the inside, because this Sphinx is facing to the west, it's facing to the inside of this holy complex. So I was with Dr. Hawass in 2014 between the paws of the Sphinx, and I went again and joined him in 2015 because of his new discovery, what he still calls his greatest discovery, the builders' tombs. The people who built the Great Pyramid, who built the pyramids of Giza, their tombs are there. And so you can see behind us there's the Dream Stele, which has the two Sphinxes facing in opposite directions. And so we've got the Great Sphinx protecting against intruders from the outside, but then the Second Sphinx, which is right on the border of Legon's plan, the same way as the other Sphinx is on the border of a unified Giza plan, protecting against enemies, traitors, we could say, on the inside. So what this says to me, you just saw me with Zahi Hawass. Do you trust Zahi Hawass? Do you trust me? Do you trust alternative researchers? What voice are you listening to help interpret the Giza Plateau? Because that's what these two Sphinxes are saying to me. I know that I'm I'm an honest researcher trying to find the truth. And if that means something to you, then I urge you to keep following me. And one way you can do that, God willing, we've got this trip planned to Egypt for April 9th through the 18th, the Ancient Mysteries of Egypt tour. I realize that COVID has changed the scenery for international travel, but Egypt is open. I just came back from a trip there. The people were welcoming. All the sites are open. And so hopefully things will have more fully cleared up by April, and many of you will choose to go and enjoy and study, experience the magic, the mysteries of ancient Egypt in Giza and the rest of Egypt. I hope you can come. Details below.